All right, let's go. It's the part-time trader back with you again. Unusually so on a Monday. I wouldn't normally upload a video on a Monday, but today is a special Monday because today is the first Monday in a long time where I've been bullish on some altcoins. And so I wanted to take this unique and rare opportunity to inject a bit of optimism into my channel for those of you who are trading or investing in cryptocurrencies and talk you through why I think moves like the one that I've outlined here on this chart for Dogecoin could be about to materialize in the next 1 to 2 months. I will hasten to add that this is short-term tactical bullishness, and I still believe that Bitcoin is on the precipice of a historic crash. But hell, for the next 1 to 2 months, I think there's reason to believe that some altcoins are going to deliver significant returns. And for that reason, I wanted to bring you a video outlining my thinking on some of these moves, what the targets look like, and also just bring some caution into the market because lots of people are calling for alt season now. There's a lot of excitement in the space. I do believe that there is reason to be optimistic, as I say, but I believe that the gains are going to be concentrated in a relatively small number of coins. And those people who are waiting for a kind of universal alt season where you can literally throw a dart at anything and it goes up 10, 20x, I just don't think that is around the corner. So if you're interested to find out where I'm expecting some of those gains to be delivered, and how I expect the next couple of months in crypto to play out, then please do stay with me. Smash the like and the subscribe button. Help me grow the channel. I massively appreciate your support. Before we get into it, just a brief reminder that nothing you hear on this channel constitutes financial advice. This is purely for fun, for entertainment purposes. I am just a random guy that you've come across on YouTube or X. So please don't take any of this as the basis for any financial or investment decisions on your part. All of that being said, let's take a quick look at the BTC chart. So this is probably the chart that I'm most famous for. Over the last 7 or 8 months, I have been calling for a crash in Bitcoin that will make some of the prior crashes look like child's play. And I still believe that we are on the brink of a total wipeout in the cryptocurrency market. And the reason for that is that I believe we are in the final throes of a massive 40-year bubble in equities that has been driven by rates heading lower, by debt and leverage in the system, and that ultimately we are about to see what the market sniper calls a debt-based collapse. And I think there are loads of technical reasons why I believe that that is upon us now. So you can see here on the S&P, we are butting into a 100-year trend line that is capping price. And I believe shortly the market is going to roll over. And you can flick through some of my previous videos if you're interested to find out some of the specific reasons why I believe that that crash is coming sooner rather than later in equities. The principal one is that the yield curve is now disinverting after the deepest and longest period of yield curve inversion in history. And I think that signals major challenges in debt markets. I think yields are pushing higher for a reason. The bond market is about to give up, and it is going to take the equity market and the cryptocurrency markets with it. Having said all of that, look guys, we have to be open-minded about the fact that sometimes tops are complicated. I know lots of people see the market as either imminent reason to believe that a crash is on the way or reason to believe that the market is about to imminently push to the upside and go for some sort of blow off top. But if you look back at some of these biggest tops in history, and this is the 2000 top on the S&P, you can see that these just take time. You know, we had this dip here, a push higher, made new highs, and price largely went sideways for about a year before finally starting to roll over and show some significant weakness. So I suppose what I'm saying in short is, in the short term, we could see some upside on alts, and people will get really excited and believe this is a sign of a blow off top. I still believe that even if we see some short-term moves in ETH and Doge and Litecoin and others, that ultimately there is reason to believe that cryptocurrency could roll over significantly. So I suppose what I'm saying in short is that tops take time to play out. They're often complex, and they in the time that the top is playing out, you know, in the time that the S&P is going sideways or that Bitcoin is kind of grinding to a halt up here at 120k, there is still room for significant moves in lower cap assets. And for that reason, I think we would be stupid and blind if we turned away from some of the signs that we're seeing in the altcoin market, that strength is on the way and that there are significant gains to be had in some of these projects. So the first thing I would say is my macro view has not changed. I still believe, if you look at this 2-week candle close yesterday, I still believe that Bitcoin is topping out here, that the S&P is topping out up here at the peak of this massive 100-year trend line. And I think we're going to see the S&P much lower than where it is today. I'm expecting a crash of at least 50%, which will put us on a par with what we saw at the end of the dot-com boom or during the great financial crisis of 07-08. And when that happens, you know, you got to remember, guys, we saw a 25-30% correction in the S&P in 2022, and during that time Bitcoin went down 77%. So all I'm saying is it impossible for Bitcoin to get totally wiped out if the stock market pulls back by 50 to 60%? I think it's absolutely not. And while most people cannot fathom prices down here, I think if and when we get there, there will be lots of reasons to believe that Bitcoin is dead. Ironically, that will be the time to buy, in the same way that at the moment, almost universally, everybody thinks that Bitcoin is going to push much higher, go to 500,000, possibly even 7 figures over the next couple of years. And that, to me, is one of the reasons why, alongside all the technicals, that I believe now is a good time to sell. So often the trick with these markets is to do the inverse of what your emotions tell you and what the majority, the herd, are thinking at the time. Having said all of that, despite my belief that Bitcoin is topping out, I do believe that we are midway through some significant upside for alts and that there are still some massive gains to be had. Probably not the kind of life-changing gains that people have grown accustomed to in what many would call alt season. So I know lots of people will be getting excited now, thinking this is the moment where their altcoin is going to go up 30, 40, 50, possibly even 100x. I really don't believe that's going to happen, guys. And it's possible that you might find some sort of micro cap shitcoin on Solana that is going to, you know, blow everybody's mind and go from 100k market cap to 10 million or whatever. Of course, those things happen, but they're really difficult to find. You have to take on a huge amount of risk in order to achieve those kind of gains. And for every winner, you'll have, 999 others that will go to zero. So you can continue chasing outsized gains in some of these micro cap alts. I think when we're talking about proper alt season, where everything goes up really significantly and money starts rotating, retail arrives, and some of these altcoins go berserk, the kind of alt season that in 2020 delivered these kind of gains, where Ethereum goes 10x in the space of 6 months. I don't believe that is where we are at the moment, but I do believe that some of these coins, Ethereum being a good example, are going to deliver some really good gains, particularly if you're a trader and you're treating these tactically and you're kind of really getting some good entries with some good exits, and you're being sensible about how you're using leverage. I think there's good money to be made over the next month or so. And this is the Ethereum chart that I posted. I suppose I've been posting variations of this for the last few months, and my thesis always was that this was a lower high, but I've always maintained that if price reclaims this 2,800 level here, which you can see is so key, has been support and resistance so many times, that would be the trigger for a much bigger move to the upside. And so when we started getting these daily candles above 2,800, I said here that my first target would be up here at 4,000. And lo and behold, we're, a week later, we're almost there. Some huge gains already had in Ethereum. And I still believe that the top could be a bit higher than this target here. I expect us as a bare minimum to take out these highs and to come into the sort of $4,300, $400 region. But I also think there's a possibility that we take out the all-time high up at about $5,000. So we do something like this. Now, there is another scenario, which I know lots of people are looking for, which is that Ethereum could push as high as sort of 8 to 10,000. I've seen some ridiculous calls for 40,000 on my feed this morning. I think some of that is nonsense. I am open-minded about the idea that Ethereum pushes up into the 8 to 10k region. It wouldn't surprise me after this long period of consolidation that we see an explosive move to the upside. I think the reason I'm hesitant is because everybody is calling out this target. And in my experience, when everybody has the same target, the likelihood of it getting there is slim. So my base case, I suppose, is that we come up, we take out these highs, and then potentially we take out the all-time high. And then wouldn't it be pretty scary if, having taken out these highs that have lasted all the way back to early 2024, we got back under, and this setup that lots of people are talking about, this sort of like right-angled wedge, actually turns into some sort of fake out. We get back under the highs and then we head lower. So that's my base case, is that we take out the all-time high, we get back under these highs, and that presents a massive shorting opportunity on ETH. But like I say, I'm open-minded about pushing higher, and we'll come on to the ETH BTC chart in a moment, because I think that has some significant clues for us as to what the market holds. So look, I'm still bullish on ETH. I think we, as a bare minimum, take out this 4,000 level. I suspect we're going to push higher and take out the all-time high, but it's some of the other coins that are exciting me at the moment. And lots of people call these the dinosaurs. These are the coins that have been around for a long time: Ethereum, Litecoin, etc. I think these are the ones that are about to push higher, and they've got some of the strongest technicals behind them. What I like about this Doge chart at the moment is that you can see this key SR here, which has held as support, resistance, resistance, support, resistance, support, support. We flipped this SR zone again, and you guys all know one of my favorite patterns is this descending broadening wedge, and that's what we've got here. This has a really high hit rate in the world of crypto, and I would not be surprised if we see one more move to the upside. And I've outlined my targets here. I think given the length of time that we've spent flipping this into support, the kind of consolidation that we've seen in price over the last 7 or 8 months, I think it's highly likely that not only do we take out the November high of last year, but that we take out at some point the all-time high here. And so there's 3 prices that I'm targeting in my mind. The first is the November high, the second is the all-time high, and then the third would be if we pushed up to the upper boundary of this sort of broadening wedge pattern that you can see here. I quite like this idea as a top, where we potentially, and I think this would probably play out quite quickly, that at some point in August we come and we touch the upper boundary here at the sort of $1.2, $1.3 region, and then get back beneath the all-time high, and that would be the trigger for downside. So I am super bullish on Doge at the moment. I think on the lower time frames, on the 1 day, the 3 day, you're seeing a significant breakout here. But on the higher time frames, I think there's reason to believe that we're going to at least come and grab the all-time high and potentially push a little bit higher. As you can see, though, what I'm not claiming is that we're on the brink of a sort of 2021 style move, where if you look at what Doge did during that time, it was just insane. It was up 150x in the space of about 5 or 6 months. I think those days are gone for now. I think the true alt season is not going to arrive until at least 27, 28. And so these moves are kind of tactical short-term opportunities to grab some gains, and these are significant. I mean, if Doge hits my 1.2 target, we're talking about circa 300%, which is massive, particularly if it plays out in the kind of speed that I'm expecting it to, where this move materializes over the next kind of 4 to 6 weeks. So these gains are big, but I'm reluctant to call this alt season, guys, for 2 reasons. One, I don't believe you're going to get the kind of truly life-changing gains that many people are chasing following these kind of moves, where Doge did 150x in the space of 4 or 5 months. I just can't see that happening. And second of all, I think these gains are going to be confined to a small number of coins. I don't think everything is going to go up 200, 300, 400% in the coming weeks. And if you're someone who is holding a coin that does not have the kind of great technical setup that we're seeing here on Doge, the temptation might be to sit in that coin and hope that, you know, the tide is gonna push all ships up. But I cannot see that happening at the moment, if I'm being honest, guys. I can't see that sitting in anything and hoping that they're all going to go up 10, 20x is going to deliver in the way that it might have done in 2021, 22, or in late 27, early 18, the 2 times that we've seen alt season previously. So, you know, yes, I'm expecting ETH to go up fairly significantly from here, but not, you know, like I say, not life-changing gains. I'm expecting Doge to deliver much more, but still relatively muted, you know, relatively muted compared to some of the expectations of people who are calling for alt season. Another coin that I really like at the moment is Litecoin, and it goes back to my point about some of the dinos performing really well potentially. You know, these guys, you know, look at, if you're a Litecoin investor, right, and if you're somebody who bought into the hype at the end of the 17, 18 bull market, this is just really depressing price action. You know, while coins like Doge, if you were accumulating back here, you know, you're probably a very wealthy man at the moment. But if you were accumulating Litecoin post the 17, 18 run, this has really done nothing since then. And we've seen this massive period of accumulation over the last 2 to 3 years that I've been flagging as a potential kind of interesting setup for upside. Now, I must confess, when we got this big deviation above the range high and we got back under and this started holding as resistance, given my overall view on the market, I did start calling for significant downside. And I do believe at some point we are eventually going to end up in this $5 region. Having said that, though, in the short term, the fact that price is now pushed back above these highs, this range high for this accumulation range, I think in a very, very short space of time, we're going to see a big push back to the previous all-time highs. And again, you know, I'm not talking about the kind of gains that are going to retire you, but that's a 200% move, potentially all unfolding in the space of 2 monthly candles, if I'm right. So lots of reason to be excited about Litecoin. I do think that some of these old school coins that have been around for a long time are going to do well. I think we've already seen that with XRP. It has run really big, and this move here really reminds me of XRP actually. So if I pull up the XRP chart really quickly, I know a few people have already posted this kind of comparison on X. Sorry, give me a second. But if I pull up the Litecoin chart alongside XRP, they remind me of each other, right? So let's pull this up on the monthly. There's just a lot of similarity here in that if you look at this high on XRP, and then we had the second high here where, you know, both markets, both XRP and Litecoin failed to make a higher high in 2021, despite the rest of the market going absolutely berserk. You know, we just came back into the 17, 18 high. And then you saw this long period of consolidation, and they do look genuinely almost identical before eventually we got this massive splurge on XRP. And again, in the space of 2 monthly candles, you know, price had gone from 50 cents up into the $3 region and back to the previous all-time high that was put in 2017, 2018. So I think a move here on Litecoin back into the high in a similar manner to what we saw on XRP feels highly probable now. And like I say, not life-changing gains, not the kind of gains that you're going to retire on, but certainly significant, especially if you are using leverage. But just be careful with leverage, guys. I know my job is not to give you financial advice, but you know, if there were one piece of advice I'd give everybody, it's just be really careful with leverage. There's so many people that get destroyed. You think you know what you're doing, you get greedy. This is a highly volatile asset class, and if you're not careful, you will get burned. So the big question for me is, if a few of these select coins are going to do well, over the coming weeks before Bitcoin eventually starts to turn around and head much lower. How do we know which ones are going to do well and which ones are going to stand still? And I think the key to answering that lies not in some of these USD pairs, but in BTC pairs. So I am only interested in altcoin charts that look like they are about to significantly outpace Bitcoin. And one of those that I believe looks really strong at the moment is this Dogecoin chart. And this is Doge versus Bitcoin. And I can see two really significant upside targets on this at the moment. Let's just talk through the setup a little bit. So why I like this, right? First of all, you've got this massive downtrend here that was broken in late 2024. And since then, Doge has massively underperformed Bitcoin. But look at what's happened. We've simply just come back to backtest the break of this downtrend. And this is now holding as support. And what's also interesting is that we put these lows in 2024 and we came back in mid 2025 and we took out these lows, and this is starting to look like a deviation and a reclaim and a push higher. And once you get a deviation on a chart of this scale, I think the move in the opposite direction is normally quite swift. I think there are three key targets for Doge, and I fancy two of them more than the other. The first would be here. So if you're looking at take profits, I would definitely be thinking about taking profit on Doge longs when Doge BTC hits this level here. You can see support, resistance, support, resistance. I think there's definitely a partial taking of profits to be had in this region. And that is still, from where we are now, that is not an insignificant gain. That is a 100% move to the upside. But the targets that I really like is, firstly, this target here, which is about 200% from where we are. And again, you've got this resistance, support, resistance, combined with this sort of sloping trend line that would meet here over the next month or two. I think there's reason to believe that this would be a good second target for taking profits. And then the final target for me would be pressing back up into the highs. And interestingly, that would be about a 450% move. And I think that would more or less marry up with Bitcoin having some sort of move into this $1.3 region. Perhaps not quite. That's a 350% move. So maybe I'm being optimistic on Doge BTC. But I think the key message on Doge BTC is this looks primed for upside. Be sensible about where to take profits. Don't be too comfortable in your longs beyond the next sort of month or so. But I would certainly, for me personally, and I cannot advise you on what to do with your own money, but for me personally, I'm seeing this as a great setup and one that could potentially deliver me some significant returns. Let's have a quick look at ETH BTC. So one of the reasons why I say that ETH BTC is unlikely to go to 8 to 10,000 is because I'm looking at this setup and I think there are two ways to read this chart, right? So I was one of very few people back here who was calling for ETH BTC to head much lower. And the reason for that was that this long-term uptrend had been broken. And I called for a move back into this region. I expected that move to happen significantly later than when it did. I didn't anticipate this to play out quite so rapidly. But now we've got there. There's one question on my mind. And that question is, are we seeing the early stages of a big accumulation down here before we see a massive break later in the decade on the ETH BTC pair that could propel it much higher than it's ever been previously? Or are we just about to complete a much more rapid move to the upside where ETH BTC has already bottomed on a macro basis and is likely to push back into these highs here, which would give us a move of about 170%. Now, interestingly, based on where Bitcoin is today, a move up into this region would probably mean that we're at about the 10,000 level. So I'm not ruling it out. I think there is definitely a chance that we see the kind of rapid move that we did here, where in a very short space of time, ETH BTC in the space of about 6 months, went absolutely bananas, Could we see something similar before the closeout of the year, where ETH-BTC breaks this really big downtrend here? And this is, for me, this is now the dominant downtrend. If we break this and we start holding above, then I would be targeting a move back to these highs. But for now, my assumption is that this trend line isn't going to break at first time of asking, and instead what we're going to do is roll back over and get this long period of accumulation. But if I'm wrong, we'll know that I'm wrong pretty quickly, because if we start getting daily closes above this downtrend, then that will be the trigger for a bigger move to the upside. And, you know, even from here, you know, you're talking about a 100% move versus Bitcoin, and that could be the shift that pushes ETH back into, not back into, but into the $8,000 to $10,000 region, which a lot of people are calling for. So I'm skeptical about the 8 to 10k move, just because everybody and their grandma is calling for 8 to 10k ETH at the moment. But could it happen? Absolutely. And if it were to happen, then in my mind, the sign that we're going that high would be a break of this downtrend on the ETH-BTC pair. So that's how I would be thinking about playing ETH. I think like I keep saying, my bias is that we're going to take out the high, we're going to get back under these highs here, and we're going to see a move much lower. And I've said before, but in that scenario, I think the low could be genuinely as low as about $80 to $90. Obviously, that will be invalidated if Ethereum does push up into this region here on the BTC pair and to about the 10k region. Because if we push up into 10k, you know, the likelihood is, even if we see a really massive crash in Bitcoin, I suspect that it's unlikely that Ethereum will come back into the $90 region. I wouldn't completely rule it out, because I do think that we are going to see a popping of the bubble that no one can anticipate. But let's play level to level on this, guys. Let's be sensible and see what unfolds in the market over the next few weeks. Like I say, if we start to see a rejection at this next key SR level for ETH-BTC and we come back in here and start to accumulate, I think this is a sign that ETH-BTC is going to run massively in the years to come and will outpace Bitcoin for a very, very long time. But if we get a short-term pop here, then I suspect this will be the end of the move, and we'll see further consolidation in this range for ETH-BTC over many, many years. So that's my view on ETH-BTC. And then there are a couple of charts that I'm going to throw back into the mix. I've touched on these before, but I wanted to highlight why not all alts are going to do really well over the coming weeks. In my view, I just think there are too many broken structures. So, you know, this is Solana versus Bitcoin. Now, if we were on the brink of alt season, I think this would look much stronger than it does. To me, this looks like a macro lower high. So high here, lower high here, and I think price is going to head much, much lower on Solana Bitcoin. At the moment, what we've seen is this year-long accumulation range breakdown, or distribution range, I should say, breakdown, and we're now back beneath this key SR zone here. So the only way that I could see Solana Bitcoin going absolutely nuts and delivering massive gains would be a reclaim of this level. If Solana BTC were to push here, then I think that would open a move to the all-time high as a possibility. But until then, I have to assume that any upside will be capped in this region here, where we'll start to get rejected off of a backtest of this distribution range. And if that happens, you know, assuming BTC stands still, as I believe it will, then we're talking about 20-25% upside for Solana versus Bitcoin. Again, not life-changing gains, and one of the reasons why I'm refusing to call this alt season, because although I expect some big moves in coins like Doge and Litecoin and Ethereum, I'm not anticipating that those same moves will be apparent in coins like Solana and even AVAX, where I believe upside will be capped in the region of about 40% versus Bitcoin, because we've only just lost this massive SR level earlier this year. And so unless there's a big reclaim here, which would give us a solid foundation to push much higher. At the moment, we still haven't, in my view, we still haven't come down and tested the lower boundary of this macro descending broadening wedge, which dates back to 2022. And we haven't seen a reclaim of this significant level here. So again, I just think some of these Bitcoin pairs have just got a lot more accumulation in front of them before we're going to see any real kind of signs of alt season, any real signs of altcoin strength versus Bitcoin. So choose your coins wisely. If you are looking to long the market, you know, I would definitely be cautious about where you're investing your money. I'm not anticipating seeing the kind of life-changing gains or universal gains across the altcoin market that people believe will happen in what we call alt season. So to wrap up, some alts are going to do well, but look, my view hasn't changed. I still believe that Bitcoin is going to head much, much lower in a really serious crash. And just to give you an idea of why I still think that some of these short-term gains on some of these alts are doable. This was the 2021 top. So remember, Bitcoin had two tops in 2021. The first up at the 60,000 region before the market pushed higher, caught everyone off guard by making new highs and then rolling over. But if you look back to this first top, as Bitcoin went sideways at the top for about 3 months, 2 to 3 months, look at what happened with some of these alts. This was Doge, which went from 5 cents up into the 60 cent region. I think it actually pushed higher. There was a wick on the weekly up into 70 cents, something like that. But massive gains that were delivered while Bitcoin was topping out. And so for that reason, I don't think you can rule out more sideways price action on BTC with 2, 3, 4, potentially 5 or 6 weeks of some of these alts delivering really significant gains. But overall, that doesn't change the macro view. In my book, I still think we're going to go much, much lower. I know people will continue to mock, but I quite like that, to be honest. If everybody agreed with me, I would probably be wrong. The fact that everybody else is on the other side of this trade and every single person on X believes that Bitcoin is going to push up into the $500,000 range tells me that there's a good chance that I'm onto something with this. So that's going to wrap me up for today. I know it was a slightly rambling video compared to some of my others. Maybe delivery wasn't quite as crisp, but I hope you found some of this useful. I hope you will hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so already, and follow me on @PartTimeCharts over on X. Really appreciate all the support I've been getting. And if you've got any questions or would like to see me cover anything else, please do leave a comment down below and I will try to come back to you.